Jing is a young man who runs a small mobile phone repair shop, but the income barely covers his rent, though that's not what really weighs on him. What truly matters is his younger sister Tong, who desperately needs surgery to fix a hole in her heart. The burden of caring for her rests entirely on Jing's shoulders. Their father abandoned the family years ago, and their mother passed away from cancer, leaving Jing as Tong's only guardian. Despite the emotional toll, Jing stays strong. One day during a visit to the doctor, he's hit with devastating news. Tong's condition is worsening rapidly. Without surgery, she has less than 2 years to live. The required surgery, however, costs over 700,000 yuan, an unimaginable amount for Jing, who has no idea how to raise such a sum. That night, while watching his sister sleep, filled with love and worry, Jing gets a call from a friend urging him to come to his factory immediately. Curious, Jing goes, only to be shown something incredible. His friend pulls back a dusty cloth, revealing a massive stash of 100,000 smartphones. The phones were originally meant for export to Italy, but were rejected during quality checks. Now, with the factory owner in jail and unpaid rent piling up for 2 years, the stock is just sitting there, forgotten but full of potential. The phones were just sitting there gathering dust. Jing's friend offered to sell the entire lot, 100,000 smartphones for 100,000 yuan, suggesting that Jing could repair and resell them for a profit. Tempted but short on funds, Jing bought just 1 unit and took it home. He spent the whole night working on it, carefully fixing its issues, and by morning, the phone powered on. Encouraged by his success, Jing went to the bank and secured a loan to buy the entire stock. With the phones in his possession, he visited a major electronics market in China and struck a deal with a refurbished phone distributor. After crunching the numbers, Jing was stunned. If all went well, the profits would exceed 1 million yuan, more than enough to cover his sister Tong's surgery. Filled with joy and relief, Jing picked Tong up from school, feeling as if the weight of the world had finally lifted. It seemed like everything was falling into place, but life doesn't always go as planned. Just 2 weeks later, a government order turned Jing's hope into despair. China imposed a sudden ban on the sale of refurbished smartphones, citing growing concerns over electronic waste. Furious, Jing rushed to confront the dealer, reminding him of their agreement. But the dealer, calm and resigned, replied that no contract could override the law, and that the deal was now void. Jing is devastated by the realization that he no longer has a way to raise money for his sister's operation. To make matters worse, he now bears the heavy burden of repaying the loan he took out to buy the phones. Just when things seem hopeless, an idea strikes him. He heads to the original smartphone manufacturing company and meets with a manager, proposing a deal. Jing will sell them the internal parts from the rejected phones at a low cost, which the company can then use in their own refurbished phones for international markets. However, the manager quickly dismisses the idea. He explains that stripping parts from the phones could compromise their quality, leading them to fail inspection. Jing confidently assures him he has a method of removing the parts without damaging them, ensuring they'll pass any quality checks. But the manager clearly has no interest in dealing with Jing, and just to get rid of him, casually suggests that if Jing wants, he can get the parts tested himself and inform him of the results. Determined not to waste this slim opportunity, Jing gets to work. For several days, he carefully dismantles dozens of phones, extracting and organizing the key components with painstaking precision. He then sends the parts for quality control testing, hoping his skills will prove enough. To his relief, all the parts pass the inspection. Thrilled, Jing rushes back to the company and proudly presents the test report to the manager, asking him to fulfill the deal. But to Jing's dismay, the manager coldly replies that he never agreed to purchase anything. He only said Jing could inform him if the parts passed testing. Jing feels crushed and betrayed, but he refuses to give up. With renewed determination, Jing sets his sights on the company's owner, Mr. Zhang, and asks him directly for just 10 minutes of his time. Unfortunately, Mr. Zhang is in a hurry to catch a train and brushes Jing off. Thinking fast, Jing buys a train ticket and dashes to the station, navigating through narrow alleys on his scooter. However, disaster strikes, he crashes and is thrown off the bike. Bruised and battered, Jing refuses to give in. He tries to restart the scooter, but it won't budge. With no other choice, he abandons it and runs as fast as he can. Gasping for breath, he reaches the station and catches the train just in time. He walks straight to Mr. Zhang's seat saying, "Now you've got 10 minutes, right?" Seated across from the stunned owner, Jing lays out his plan in detail. Mr. Zhang listens but remains skeptical, insisting that removing parts without damage is unrealistic. Still, Jing's passion and persistence move him. Eventually, Mr. Zhang agrees to the proposal, but with tough terms. If the parts fail quality control, Jing gets nothing. No help, no workers, no investment. Jing has to do it all by himself. As they step off the train, Jing realizes the gravity of the task ahead, dismantling and salvaging parts from 100,000 phones alone. That night, he picks up his sister Tong from his friend's house. On their way home, Tong notices the bruises and scrapes on Jing's back. Her eyes fill with tears as she realizes he must have had an accident. Choked with emotion, she quietly tells him, "Please don't drive so fast next time. You're all I have left in the world." Jing promises Tong he'll drive slower from now on, and when they get home, she gently treats his injuries. Later that evening, Jing approaches his neighbor Zhao and shares his ambitious plan to launch a factory dedicated to dismantling the phones. He asks Zhao if he'd be willing to help manage the production part-time. Zhao hesitates, warning Jing that the plan is risky and could cost him everything. But Jing explains he has nothing left to lose, except his sister. If this doesn't work, there's no other way to pay for her surgery. Touched by his sincerity, Zhao agrees to help. The next day, Jing sells his shop and scooter and uses the money to rent a warehouse for his factory. Together, he and Zhao clean the entire space, build shelves, and furnish it just enough to store the 100,000 phones. They name the factory Nice View. With the foundation set, the next step is hiring workers. But to keep costs low, Jing decides to recruit people who are struggling to find employment. His first hire is Wang, a single mother who suffers from partial hearing loss due to loud noise exposure at her old job. She's currently working as a server, but her hearing issues cause frequent mistakes. Still, she has a decent understanding of electronics. Jing offers her the job, and she gratefully accepts. Next is Zhang, an odd but strong man who keeps to himself and owns many dogs. He once punched his former boss and hasn't worked since, but Jing gives him a second chance. Then, Jing brings on 2 teenage gamers who are addicted to computer games and have never held jobs before. Still, Jing trains them all patiently, especially emphasizing quality control. Soon, some elderly retirees living nearby offer to help. Bored at home, they're moved by Jing's mission and lend a hand voluntarily. The team is finally ready and production begins the next day, but Jing doesn't have enough money to pay wages yet. To cover costs, he takes a job cleaning windows referred by a friend. By day, he scrubs glass several stories high. By night, he joins his team in dismantling the phones. Working nearly 20 hours a day, he runs on just 4 hours of sleep, driven by a single goal, saving his sister's life. One afternoon, a problem arises. Outside the factory, a group of thugs confronts Wang. They demand she withdraw the lawsuit she filed against her previous employer, the same company responsible for her hearing loss. When she refuses, one of the men slaps her, knocking off her hearing aid, a priceless gift from her son. Jing sees this and immediately launches into action, flying in with a powerful kick to knock down the attacker. The man's backup steps forward to retaliate, but Jing's team quickly surrounds him. As tensions rise, Zhang steps in and calmly takes out every thug with surprising skill and ease. Once the fight ends, Jing tells them not to return again. But Wang, furious and hurt, grabs an axe and tries to go after them. Jing and the others rush to restrain her. He promises her that he'll fix her hearing aid himself, which helps calm her down. A few days later, one of Jing's employees gets married, and Jing is invited to give a heartfelt speech at the wedding. He speaks warmly, bringing laughter and even a few tears to the crowd. Later that night, over drinks, Zhao asks Jing if he ever thinks about his own future, about what he wants for himself. Jing simply replies that all he dreams of is seeing his sister grow up healthy and happy. But Jing's challenges are far from over. When he returns home with Tong after the party, he finds a note pinned to their door from the landlord. He must pay 4 months of overdue rent before he can re-enter. Jing tries his key, but the landlord has already changed the lock. He calls the landlord to plead his case, but the man refuses to open the door or show leniency. With nowhere to go and his sister by his side, Jing brings her to Zhao's house for the night. Overwhelmed with stress, Jing remembers his friend who had sold him the stock of phones and still owes him 2,000 yuan. Frustrated, Jing storms over and demands the money, punching the man in anger and collecting every last bill he can find in the house. The next day, Jing decides not to trouble Zhao any longer. He moves himself and Tong into the factory. There's no bed, no comfort, just hard floors and a few blankets. Jing feels ashamed that he can't even give his sister a proper place to sleep. He vows to push himself even harder, drastically cutting his rest down to short naps between endless hours of work. One night, while Jing is briefly napping at his desk, Tong wakes him up in a panic after hearing noises outside. Alarmed, Jing rushes out and finds two people stealing phones from his truck. As the thieves spot him, they make a run for it. Jing jumps onto the truck in an attempt to stop them and ends up struggling with one of the intruders. The truck veers into the street, and both Jing and the thief are thrown off violently. Jing suffers severe injuries to his fingers. The driver flees, but Jing manages to grab the accomplice and demands the stolen phones back. Just then, Tong arrives, and seeing her brother bloodied and hurt, bursts into tears. Later, after receiving medical care, the police inform Jing they caught the driver thanks to the captured thief and have recovered all the stolen phones. The next day, Jing returns to his window cleaning job, but his injury affects his grip. He accidentally drops a bucket of water, leading his boss to summon him to the office. When he removes his gloves, his swollen hand shocks the boss. Instead of sympathy, Jing gets fired on the spot. Though he's paid for the 3 days he worked, despite the injury. Now jobless and broke, Jing is overwhelmed. He's unable to pay rent for his factory, let alone cover wages or fund Tong's surgery. The fear he's tried to suppress finally becomes real when his landlord shows up, giving him just 3 days to settle the rent before he rents the place to someone else. With no other option left, Jing stands firmly in front of the manager's car during a heavy downpour, pleading for an advance payment. Instead of sympathy, the manager mocks him, calling him a delusional wage earner chasing impossible dreams, then shoves him aside and drives away. Soaked and disheartened, Jing returns to Zhao's house to spend the night with his sister as the storm continues to batter the city. The next morning, as Jing arrives at his office, he is devastated to find all his belongings dumped on the street. The landlord has rented the place to someone else, showing no mercy. Defeated, Jing sits silently on the roadside, his eyes following the trail of an ant, his mind void of ambition, energy, or hope. Just then, all his employees arrive, ready to begin the day's work. Jing quietly apologizes and informs them that the factory has shut down and he can no longer pay their wages. But instead of leaving, the team surprises him. They say they're no longer just his employees, they're a family. They understand what he's going through and are willing to continue working without pay until things get better. They remind Jing that he was the only one who believed in them and gave them a chance when no one else would. Energized by their loyalty, Jing regains his determination. They load the phone stock onto trucks and take them home, turning their living spaces into temporary workstations. Together, they continue dismantling phones day after day. Months pass in grueling silence, but finally the parts are ready for quality inspection. Still, Jing can't shake the fear. What if the parts are rejected? The group anxiously awaits the results. Then they're called to meet CEO Zhang. With a calm smile, Zhang congratulates Jing for finishing the order on time and reveals that 87% of the parts have passed quality control. Tears well in Jing's eyes. But the surprises aren't over. Zhang, thoroughly impressed, offers Jing a 2-year deal with 5 million yuan. Jing, still stunned, asks with a half-joking smile if he could get an advance payment this time. Zhang chuckles and agrees. The group tries to contain their excitement in the elevator, but the moment the doors close, they explode with cheers and laughter. Finally, Jing is able to get Tong the surgery she needs. The story fast-forwards 6 years. Jing's company, Niceview, has become a giant success. Now a billionaire, Jing is seen on stage launching a new product. All of his original team, now successful and wealthy in their own right, stand proudly in the crowd, cheering him on.